Good journey, everyone. Welcome to Space Oats Live, a Star Wars podcast. This is episode 101. To understand a species, one must understand their art. Of course, that's a quote from Grand Admiral Thrawn, one of many people's favorite legends turned canon Star Wars villains outside of Darth Vader and some others. I'm a big fan of Thrawn. I love Thrawn. I mean, the Thrawn trilogy that Timothy Zahn wrote it was enlightening because it gave us something that we had been waiting for years and years and years as Star Wars fans. It was a dark time, so like we waited for that. So yeah, thanks for joining in. Thanks for joining in to Space Oats Live, a Star Wars podcast. We're gonna get into all this, the Thrawn trilogy. You know, in book form, in comic form, in um, trilogies in general. What makes a good trilogy? That's why I posted that question. What makes a good Star Wars trilogy or a movie trilogy? Because some work, some don't, and there's very few out there that actually have had successes. Some of them break down and they just don't pan out to be a great trilogy. There's a few of them out there. And we'll talk about those. And then some end up becoming a saga. And should they have just been left alone? I mean, there's a bunch out there as well. So yeah, we'll talk about all of that. But first, we actually got some exciting news today. In the means of our Emmy nominations. And if you didn't know this, uh, well, this is actually yesterday that this was posted, late yesterday, because I actually did not see it until this morning. But yeah, we got some Emmy awards for Andor, and for The Acolyte. What's really funny is I can't believe that it's been just a year since The Acolyte came out. It came out last year, in the beginning of the year. I can't believe that. So, and we also there's also Emmy Award for John Williams alone, his story, the music of John Williams, which if you haven't watched that, I highly recommend it. But let's just go through Andor for instance, because Andor, 14 Emmy Award nominations, 14, crazy. I mean, that just shows how amazing and successful that series was. And season 2 really just went over the top. And most of them come from particular episodes. But I'm just going to run through these. For one, Andor, just all around. Season 2 of Andor nominated for Outstanding Drama Series. I hope this wins. I mean, honestly, it was amazing. And it being a season 2 and getting that nomination, and the final season, really. Season 2, final season, getting that nomination, I really, really hope that it wins, because I think it deserves it. Overall, just an amazing production. And then we, got some certain episodes, outstanding production design for a narrative, period, or fantasy program with an hour or more. And the episode Who Are You was nominated for that. Who Are You was the episode, basically the final episode of the Gorman campaign, basically. When the Gormans actually revolted the Empire, they basically got their way. That's where Cyril actually came to his end of his story, which was, the title, Who Are You? That was Cassian basically being like, who are you? Which I love that. I love that they just threw that title in there as just a little minor phrase that really didn't even matter. It just, yeah, it was just hilarious. I mean, it really shows how Cyril just kind of just went over the top these whole first season and almost all of second season, just this grudge against Cassian. And then Cassian doesn't even know who he is. He's just like, who are you? Which is really funny. And then, then the demise happens. Sorry, spoilers. Outstanding cinematography for a series that's 1 hour. Harvest was just beautifully shot. It's those wheat fields and everything. It just so amazing. Harvest also gets a nominee for outstanding fantasy sci-fi costumes. Some awesome costumes in that episode. Outstanding directing for a drama series. Janice Metz directing Who Are You? Again, what a great episode that was. Outstanding picture editing for a drama series, Who Are You? Jan Miles was the editor for that episode. Outstanding music composition for a series. Original dramatic score for Who Are You, which has some amazing compositions in that. The Gorman music is just fantastic. Brandon Roberts was the composer for that music there in that episode. Outstanding original music and lyrics. The song from the Who Are You episode, We Are the Gore. Again, just gut-wrenching, that song. Nicholas Bertel did the music and lyrics. Tony Gilroy also involved with the music and lyrics of that song as well. Outstanding guest actor in a drama series. Forrest Whitaker as Saul Guerrera in the episode I Have Friends Everywhere. Forrest Whitaker, what a great job. I just would love to see him come back again as Saul in some way or another. Can't we just have another film or series that touches into that time frame of Star Wars so that we can get Saul back at some point? So fantastic. Outstanding character voiceover performance. Alan Tudyk as K2SO in Who Else Knows. Love having Alan Tudyk come back as K2SO, which was just fantastic, and just picking up right where he left off in Rogue One, becoming the amazing voice of K2SO. Outstanding sound editing for a comedy or drama series that's 1 hour. Again, Who Are You? Having been nominated for that. Many people involved in that sound editing for that episode, and what a powerful episode that was as well. Outstanding sound mixing for a comedy or drama series. Again, Who Are You? The episode. And outstanding special visual effects in a season or a movie, and or getting the nomination as well for overall, which I think just says it all. We know how just amazing Industrial Light and Magic is over there, and doing some amazing work. Outstanding writing for a drama series. Welcome to the Rebellion, which Dan Gilroy wrote. That is probably one of my favorite episodes. That's where Mon Mothma gives her speech and basically just leaves her life behind, which Mon Mothma, again, being one of my favorite side characters of that. And then again, going over that Acolyte actually got a nomination as well, because that was released last year. Can't believe that it's only been a year. Outstanding sound editing for a comedy or drama series, half hour. The Acolyte for the episode Night. So basically going up against Andor, which obviously, if I were to pick one over the other, it would have to be Andor, but really goes to show you that the Acolyte, is such a powerful, it had such an amazing job, and Night was probably the best episode. And then music by John Williams getting some nominations. Outstanding sound editing for a nonfiction or reality program. And also outstanding sound mixing for a nonfiction program. So congratulations to all those that are nominated, because nominations are a big deal in itself, and it's fantastic to see such amazing work that went into Andor season 2, and it's just ups the level, ups the bar all the time, and I can't wait to see what's next live action wise. But we're going to go back and we're going to talk about trilogies, especially the Thrawn trilogy. So trilogies, Star Wars trilogies, I think the original trilogy really just put Star Wars on the map. And I think everybody kind of tries to live up to that when they try to make trilogies. And I think it's to perfection, the original trilogy, with how each chapter in the act works. And it was interesting because George Lucas kind of just pulled it out of a whole story and created this middle story with 3 acts. And he picked this in a way where we could have a beginning without really telling a lot of the backstory or knowing a lot of the backstory, and then the middle, which you do kind of have to know what's been going on to an extent, but then that middle having that great cliffhanger for that climactic ending in Return of the Jedi. And it's so well artistically done. And So diving into this topic that's honestly, as far as any Star Wars fans, because anybody that grew up with the original trilogy, it's really near and dear to those that Star Wars is, or how they feel in their heart. And I think we look at Star Wars in that way, like we want a trilogy story a lot. Series are great as well, but I prefer a trilogy setting, especially with Star Wars in movies. The standalones are great, but I think just growing up with the trilogy series, the original trilogy, and then getting the prequel trilogy, which was done very well also, and I think there's a reason why to that. Um, and then just seeing other trilogies come to play, like the Indiana Jones trilogy, which works very well. Had a great beginning, great middle, great end. Back to the Future, another great trilogy, um, works very well. Similar to how Star Wars is, the middle movie with that cliffhanger at the end, knowing that there's another one coming. There's gonna be that climactic ending. Um, I just think the trilogy format works so well. Jurassic Park didn't really work too well. You had Jurassic Park, Lost World, and then Jurassic Park 3, which kind of, you know, was supposed to carry on with the characters. The original first two were based off the books, and I think that's why the third one really didn't connect very well, because it was a different story. It was just created as a third act. But it didn't really sit well with a lot of us. I know it didn't really with me. It was a great standalone, I thought, fun, but it didn't really mash up together with that. Hunger Games trilogy worked well. So much in that last movie, though, that they had to split that into part one, part two, which then doesn't really count as a trilogy. Uh, doesn't really count as a trilogy when you have to do that. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, fantastic. Peter Jackson did an amazing job based off of books. Again, um, not an original story, but I thought he did a very good job at breaking it up and, according to the books, picking and choosing the right stories to tell and expand on, because he couldn't put it all in there. And I mean, we have the expanded versions, which is fantastic. Um, and making that into a wonderful trilogy, which worked very well. Probably the Lord of the Rings trilogy being a favorite of mine over one of the Star Wars trilogies, that being the sequel trilogy. Sequel trilogy, for a lot of fans, didn't work. And I feel that it worked, but I understand why a lot of people just did not feel it as strongly as the other trilogies that came about. And it really goes to question. Well, I mean, let's before we do that. So when we're just talking about Star Wars and trilogies, the trilogy that everybody really was looking forward to, that because we didn't really have any movies coming out, was a book trilogy that was like a movie and so well written that it very much paralleled the original Star Wars trilogy, and that was the Thrawn Trilogy. And it really did something for me because I was not a book reader, but it took me into reading books, and it brought me back to another Star Wars story that would have that amazing beginning, middle, and end with some new characters, but then revisiting the old characters and still be exciting new, fresh, but familiar, and almost seeing it as a movie. The Thrawn Trilogy, I think everybody kind of thought that this could actually be made into movies. Of course, that route was never taken, but we see how invested we were with the characters, that those characters have now come back in canon, having their own redone trilogies multiple times, that being Thrawn, and two separate trilogies as it is, and being incorporated in some of the other live actions, which is really goes to show that it was a trilogy that worked very well. So, what really makes a good trilogy? Well, it's more than just three movies in a series or three books in a series. It's more of a cohesive narrative. And that's the important thing, the cohesive narrative that expands upon a central theme or a story arc. Um, but then allows for deeper exploration of characters and themes across the three films, um, which Star Wars does very well. Some key elements to a good trilogy: a strong overarching story, a clear beginning. When you see Star Wars as a standalone film, a very clear beginning, um, a clear middle, which Empire Strikes Back does have, with a very good cliffhanger, and an end, which Return of the Jedi, for years and years, we thought that was the end. And it could have been the end. Could have never made another Star Wars film after that. Never had another story after that. We would have been satisfied with that end. Each film acts as a distinct chapter, which George Lucas clearly placed as 4, 5, and 6. It had that beginning, the middle, the end of a middle act, really, of a middle of a story. But each had its own distinct chapter that contributed to the larger narrative. Again, a story that we did not know yet, the prequels, and then the ones possibly that would be coming afterwards. Um, Again, George Lucas always compared it to a play, and this was a three-act play, um, as three acts taken out from an overall play, but chose to do that middle act in a three-act play. And each movie served its purpose in building toward a satisfying conclusion, which it did. Even though Star Wars A New Hope was a lot of a standalone, it introduced us to these characters. And then Empire built upon those characters, which left us with that cliffhanger that gave us that end story, that satisfying conclusion, as it were. Many individual story arcs within each film, which again, we do have many different characters that aren't really a main character in themselves, but they have their own story going on, and all of them being connected to that main story. But each movie has its own compelling plot, which definitely was the case. Again, Star Wars, the original trilogy, you can watch any on their own and be fine with it. Um, Even Empire Strikes Back, which clearly has the cliffhanger, you still get a feeling of that middle chapter not really being the case. It can stand alone. You can watch that and be satisfied, and not have to go and watch Return of the Jedi right after. But it does set up the next installment. Um, One I forgot about actually is the Bourne trilogy. The Bourne trilogy, before some of the other extras came along afterwards, but the Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy, and the Bourne Ultimatum did a very good job with that balance as well. I think that's a very underrated trilogy. Of course, there were other films that came after, but if you just take those three as a standalone trilogy, I think that's one of the better trilogies as well. Character development in a trilogy. The characters should evolve, grow throughout the trilogy, which clearly you see in the Star Wars trilogy, facing new challenges, making choices that shape their identities, relationships. Um, and I really do feel that like Luke Skywalker is his progression from Star Wars to Return of the Jedi is such a is is such a clear example of a great trilogy character growing. Luke, first seeing him as this naive farm boy, and then in Return of the Jedi, a very confident standing before the Emperor, knowing that he can turn his father back to the good side, um, is a great example of that identity that makes progressions, overcomes challenges, grows, and makes choices to shape their identity overall in the end. Consistent themes and tones. Obviously, Star Wars is going to do that very well. Um, the core theme and overall tone of all the films really do have to remain consistent in a trilogy, providing a unified experience, which obviously works well when you have the same writers. Um, which we'll get to in a minute. Strong visual, technical elements, which obviously Star Wars has always been great at. Great trilogies often showcase very high quality cinematography, special effects, sound design, acting, contributing to a truly immersive and memorable experience. Again, I had mentioned the Lord of the Rings trilogy as a definite challenger to Star Wars, even though, it's not an original story, but Peter Jackson did such a great job and is often praised um, for the Lord of the Rings trilogy and its stunning visual effects and captivating performances um, in that series. A cohesive vision. Ideally, a trilogy is guided by a clear artistic vision from the start, whether from a single director or a dedicated creative team, ensuring a consistent direction across all films. This is one of the main reasons why trilogies end up not working, because there isn't a clear path from the beginning. Star Wars works so well because this was George's vision overall. Even though he didn't direct the second two, he wrote the scripts. He was involved with the process. The prequel trilogies worked well because George was involved with the process from the beginning to the end. I think one of the reasons why the sequel trilogy doesn't feel like it works very well is because there wasn't a clear path in the beginning. They kind of just carried off and wrote separately, not really combining their team efforts together and creating this clear, cohesive direction across all three films. Um, you can tell when a sequel is made purely for financial reasons. Again, I feel that's like where Jurassic Park kind of made its wrong turn with Jurassic Park 3. It was like, oh, we can do another one, but we don't have a book to base it off of. Let's just create this third movie in this trilogy. And it didn't really work too well. And there's a lot of movies where you see that downward path because of that. The movies are making lots of money. Let's make another one. Let's make another one. And eventually, the creative process starts to dwindle. Maybe it's because certain ones that are involved in the creative process from the beginning leave the projects, and that could be the case. A sense of accomplishment in a trilogy. The resolution in the final film should provide a satisfying conclusion to the journey the audience has taken with the characters and the story. Return of the Jedi does that to perfection. Ultimately, a great movie trilogy leaves a lasting impression on audiences, becoming a cherished cinematic experience that stands the test of time, which obviously Star Wars has. And that's why we always want more, because of the setup of this amazing trilogy that we have. That's why Lord of the Rings continues to succeed, because of the amazing trilogy performance that Peter Jackson brought to the table in the very beginning. That is why the Thrawn Trilogy was so important, because it reinvigorated Star Wars. We had nothing at all. Return of the Jedi was it. We were done. No talks of anything in the future. Heir to the Empire comes out, and it is this beginning story that brings about some new characters, but brings us that familiar back and sets us off on this new adventure that reinvigorates Star Wars. And that Thrawn trilogy, I believe, really if it weren't for that trilogy being such a success, we would not have continued having more books with Star Wars, gaining more momentum with people wanting more Star Wars, and then possibly George Lucas deciding, hey, I need to go back and write some more Star Wars for the fans, because the fans are loving this. They still want more. They're still invested in this. And that Thrawn trilogy was so important, I believe, in that way. So we're going to talk about the Thrawn trilogy for a minute. For those of you who might be new to this corner of the galaxy that is now Legends, the Thrawn trilogy, the original Thrawn trilogy, was one of the most beloved Star Wars stories of all time. So much so that so many people were so upset when the sequels came out, based on the fact that it strayed away from what this trilogy gave us. Also, so much hatred for Disney decanonizing this series and it becoming Legends, all because of the love of this series. It originally came out, and I remember this. I remember the day that I bought the book. It originally came out on the bookshelves as a series of novels. Heir to the Empire was released in 1992, which I pulled off the shelves just because it looked like it could be the next Star Wars movie. Followed by Dark Force Rising and The Last Command, which both were published in 1993. And all three of these books weren't just popular. They were instrumental in shaping the expanded universe of Star Wars for a generation of fans. For the old generation, those of us that grew up with the original trilogy, to a new generation, which ended up going back and watching these films and becoming new fans. Speaking of shaping the expanded universe, what happened last year was the culmination of all of these books that had been taken from novel formation and placed into comic book adaptation. Finally, July 16th of last year, we got a collected edition of the Star Wars Legends, the Thrawn Trilogy comic book adaptation, which is one of the reasons I wanted to dive into these trilogy novels, because the Thrawn Trilogy comic book adaptation, which ended up being 18 issues total, have been going on as Legends from Dark Horse, finally getting its complete trade paperback form last year on this day. So this was a collected edition of that Thrawn Trilogy adaptation to comic books. I've not read this, and I kind of want to pick it up. I forgot that this came out last year. I really do want to pick this up and go through this and revisit the Thrawn Trilogy in comic book adaptation. I went through a lot of the covers today and looked at the covers, and it just got me so excited. And it just looks like a fantastic trade paperback. And it brings together that entire comic adaptation of the iconic series of the Thrawn Trilogy. So if you've never experienced the Thrawn Trilogy in the novel format, I highly recommend going and reading the novels. But maybe sometimes you want something more visual first. And I tend to like to, if there's a book based off of a movie, or if I know a book is coming out that's going to be based off of the movie, I'd rather watch the movie first and then go and read the book, because then you already have a visual idea and you can paint the picture in your head while you're reading. So maybe you want that visual experience a little bit more. So I would highly recommend picking up this collected edition. It's six issues. Every novel was broken down into 6 issues. So Heir to the Empire had issues 1 through 6, Dark Force Rising 1 through 6, and The Last Command 1 through 6. It was by Mike Barron, based off of the original Timothy Zahn novel, illustrated by Oliver Vatine, Fred Blanchard, and various others. The cover design or artwork was by Matthew Lefray. And yeah, I'm going to go through some of these covers because just so amazing. Honestly, if anybody is unfamiliar with the Thrawn, I'm going to give a little bit of a brief overview, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I really think that everybody should read this amazing series. So, but I am going to we're going to look at some of these covers of these issues, if I can find them in the right order of how I did it. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and put on the trade paperback first. This was I want to do this. This is what I want to do. This is the trade paperback trilogy collection cover of the Thrawn Trilogy, which was kind of the same as the first issue, by the way, which we'll look at in a minute. But yeah, so for any of you that are unfamiliar with the story, quick refresher. 5 years after the glorious Rebel victory over the second Death Star, so about 9 years after the Battle of Yavin, Luke Skywalker, still the last of the Jedi, hint, hint, similar to the title of The Last Jedi from Rian Johnson. Han Solo, Princess Leia are recently married, that story was told in another Legends book couple years later. They're taking on the heavy burdens of stabilizing the fledgling New Republic, but the galaxy isn't quite safe yet. Far, far away, something dangerous is stirring, a lingering faction of the Empire, near death, but all the more dangerous for it, and the discovery of a long-lost force that could spark it back to life. The last of the Emperor's military masterminds, Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is introduced to us, is ready to seize his chance to control the remaining Empire and ultimately the galaxy. Yeah, so just fantastic this story is. Going over again just a little bit more about these amazing stories. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the comics and basically each one just share with you the amazing covers here. So this one, the first one here, issue number 1 of 6 for Heir to the Empire. Again, very similar to the overall final trade paperback cover for the entire series. Heir to the Empire here, showing Thrawn and Luke on the cover there. Grand Admiral Thrawn, again, plotting to destroy the New Republic, despite many numerical advantages over the remaining Imperial forces. He sets his sight on the Wayland Storehouse, which if Bad Batch fans will know, we have revisited some of these planets of the late Emperor Palpatine, which contains a massive array of Sparti, I think I pronounced that right, cloning cylinders and a working cloaking shield. Thrawn and his subordinate, Gilead Pelion, who has resurfaced again in live action as well. Captain of the Star Destroyer Chimera, which we have in live action. It's so great just to hear yourself read these things and be like, we now have all of this in live action. It's just so great. They enlist the help of smuggler Talon Card and his second in command, Mara Jade. So these individuals we have not yet seen any concoction of in canonical form yet. But 2 characters that were introduced to us that were amazing. And I think a lot of us fans would love to see come to live action in one way or another. And the reason why they are enlisted is to obtain several salamander-like creatures, and I cannot remember the pronunciation of them. Salamiri, I think it was. Thrawn uses these to, which they possess the natural ability to disrupt the Force, which we've kind of seen a little bit of something like this in canon, but not in this way. Thrawn uses them to subdue the Wayland Storehouse's guardian, Joris Sabaoth, who is a twisted clone of a Jedi Master who the Grand Admiral had killed years before. Sabaoth offered his allegiance to Thrawn in exchange for 2 acolytes to bend to his will, that being Darth Vader's twin children, Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia Organa. Thrawn sends some of his Noghri killers, which we have seen in Star Wars Rebels, that being Rook. And Thrawn sends them out to capture Luke and a pregnant Leia, but his attempts repeatedly fail. Leia defends herself from one attack and is surprised when the Noghri suddenly surrenders. Thrawn launches his first offensive, a series of hit-and-run attacks into New Republic territory, before stealing a complement of mole miners from Lando Calrissian's mining operation on Niklon. I'm going to go ahead and show some of these other covers here. This one here of Han and Leia, kind of on the run. This one was when Chewbacca was actually trying to help protect Princess Leia from the assassins that were out to get her. I'm going to go throw this one up here, and I'll talk a little bit more. Issue 4 of 6, Heir to the Empire, with Mara Jade there, and R2-D2. In need of warships, and with his previous tactics having forced over 100 lightly crewed ships to be stationed at the Sluisvan shipyards, Thrawn invades. His stormtroopers use the stolen miners to board and hijack the ships. However, his efforts are thwarted. Calrissian seizes control of the miners remotely. Thrawn withdraws his forces thanks to his plotting. His New Republic nemesis, the Mon Calamari, Admiral Akbar, is subsequently arrested on accusations of treason. So that was kind of an interesting plot within this story. Admiral Akbar, who we all loved, with that. Mara Jade basically being sent to kill Luke. That's one of her assignments, which she does kind of have a hatred for Luke Skywalker in this trilogy of books, which turns out to be an interesting over arc story as well for her. Here we have Luke Skywalker, and the last issue cover for the Heir to the Empire comic series. Here, it's interesting, the Stormtrooper helmets, which I've never known this or realized this, but they look a lot like the First Order helmets, kind of, in this art. But yeah, fantastic, Heir to the Empire. Then we moved on to Dark Force Rising, the second novel and the comic adaptation of these films. The first issue there, Dark Force Rising, again, released originally in 1992. It was revealed that before the Clone Wars, the Old Republic had constructed a fleet of highly automated heavy cruisers known as the Katana Fleet, which were dreadnoughts. And we've heard of dreadnoughts, and had them in dreadnought cruisers in some of the Star Wars films as of late, and other canon stories on screen and in series. And But this Katana fleet, in this one, a virus had infected the crew and drove them insane. The fleet was never seen again until Card discovered it um, several years before the events of Heir to the Empire. So now, with access to Palpatine's private storehouse on Wayland, Thrawn presses his advantage to marshal forces for the battle against the New Republic. So he wants this fleet. Let me go ahead and get to another cover here. It's an amazing cover. I love this artwork. This artwork is just amazing on these covers. Mara Jade, in an attempt to exonerate the Empire's warrant for Card's arrest, goes to Thrawn and offers to reveal the location of the Katana fleet. Instead, he has her followed and Card is captured. Luke and Mara rescue Card from Thrawn's Star Destroyer as Thrawn attempts to capture another man who's known about the Katana fleet. Meanwhile, Leia learns that the Nokri serve the Empire because they revere her late father, Darth Vader, who they believe saved her planet Hanukkah from ecological disaster. So this is kind of like the plot twist with the Nokri, which ends up coming to the end here. I think this is where they kind of called her Lady Vader, maybe. Leia actually does have Force vision of Vader in these books, in these stories. I think that's the Nogri pictured on the cover, which kind of look a lot different from what we saw them in Star Wars Rebels with Rook. Anyway. Leia ends up convincing them that they have been deceived and effectively enslaved by the Empire, and they end up switching sides. And this is something that ends up kind of setting up a little bit of the conclusion, if you don't know. Akbar temporarily has been neutralized as a tactical opponent. Thrawn leads an army of clones to claim the so-called Katana fleet, outmaneuvering Luke, Lando, and Han Solo. So again, this is kind of the great middle story of a trilogy where you think they're going to win. Again, Empire Strikes Back, Dark Force Rising, very similar. You think the Empire has the upper hand in this story, and pretty amazing. Covers are again just fantastic through this. We also learned, I think, at the end of this book of Luke's clone, which is kind of an amazing little side story as well that really does give an ending to some of the story arcs with Mara Jade and all of that. So I'm just enamored by these amazing covers here. Really makes me want to go back and read these. And so, but and then The Last Command, which was the last adaptation, the last 6 episodes, got Ben Kenobi on the cover. I can't remember why. I don't remember Ben factoring in these stories at all. This is again, I've read this like so long ago. But The Last Command actually does have a little bit of a jump in the storyline about a month after Dark Force Rising. Thrawn is using the Katana fleet, crewed with clones, to mount a successful offensive against the New Republic. He seizes one planet after the other, immobilizes the galactic capital world Coruscant, which again was the first mention of Coruscant. Timothy Zahn created Coruscant, I believe, at least in mainstream. So we learn a lot about Mara Jade in this book as well. Thrawn placing multiple cloaked asteroids around the planet, leading the New Republic leadership to believe that Coruscant is surrounded with them. But the Republic fleet learns of the deception, attacks the Imperial shipyards at Bilbringi, capturing a device that can find the cloaked asteroids. But Thrawn forces intercept and surround them. Um, ugh, that is an amazing cover anyway. Luke and Leia lead a group to destroy the cloning facility on Wayland, killing Sabaoth and destroying the cloning cylinders. That is just an amazing cover that was. And just as Thrawn and Pelion learn that the Nokree aided in the attack on Wayland, Thrawn's bodyguard, Rook, kills the Grand Admiral, whose last words are, "But it was so artistically done." Again, Thrawn being a very big lover of art in his warfare and learning about his opponents. We kind of see a little bit of a glimpse of that in the live action version in Ahsoka. So, and just going through these last ones here, Mara Jade and Luke, not the real Luke, the clone Luke, have a great face off, and Mara Jade defeats him. But so the Battle of Brobringy turns the hope of victory dashed by Thrawn's death. Pelion orders the Imperial forces to retreat. So Pelion living on for another day. Pretty amazing. I hope to actually see more of Pelion in the live action. I think we're going to maybe see him in the next installment of whatever Thrawn is in. Guessing that's going to be in the movie. Or Ahsoka season 2. I don't know. We still really don't know what's going on with where these shows are, the path that these shows are taking. But the Thrawn Trilogy really does every definition of the trilogy and really carrying on. And again, it's very cohesive. All the things that I was mentioning earlier about a great trilogy, the books really do. And I feel that I think that's why it stands the test of time. But that storyline is definitely legendary for a reason. It introduced us to incredible new characters, expanded the scope of the Star Wars universe in fascinating ways, truly showcased the strategic brilliance of Thrawn, even though if you don't like the way he strategized. And if you've never read these stories, or if you're a long-time fan looking to revisit them in this new format, like I am, because I have not done that yet, the collected comic edition looks like it's something that you definitely should pick up. I know I'm going to be trying to. But that is it for this week. Hope everybody's having a great week. Thank you for joining for this episode of Space Oats Live, Star Wars podcast. Until next time, do something Star Wars. Read some Star Wars. Watch some Star Wars. Listen to some Star Wars. Play some Star Wars. Do something Star Wars. Most importantly, whatever you're doing, may the stars light your way. Have a great evening, everyone, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.